Jack Stollsteimer, Democrat running for PA Attorney General. Why are you running for this office?
Thank you. First of all, it's great to be here and talk to all the viewers of PCN. I'm a regular viewer myself, so I'm very happy to be and honored to be on. I'm running for Attorney General to help families that, like mine, have struggled to live the American dream. I want to put my experience as an elected prosecutor in the 5th largest county of the Commonwealth, to be the Commonwealth's chief law enforcement officer. But beyond that, I want to use the powers of the Attorney General's office to help families who are trying to find their American dream. My family struggled to get to where we are today. I want to help other people by using the power of this office.
Can you explain the duties of Attorney General?
Absolutely. Attorney General is the Commonwealth's chief law enforcement officer, but also the Commonwealth's chief civil officer. So in our system of justice, there's both a criminal side and there's a civil side. Mm-hmm. The Attorney General has responsibilities to both. So as chief law enforcement officer for the Commonwealth, he or she has responsibilities for the supervision and the investigation of thousands of criminal cases every year, taking them through to prosecution. As a civil attorney, both defending the Commonwealth and also going proactively to help protect consumers by taking civil litigation against corporations or other people who are trying to defraud people.
What have been some of the more important issues on the Attorney General's desk in recent years?
Yeah, first of all, Attorney General Shapiro and our current Attorney General Michelle Henry are dear friends of mine who I've had the fortune of the last 4 years to work hand in glove with them on many different initiatives, including stopping gun violence, making sure that our election system is fair and secure, and doing things like suing the opioid distributors and bringing tens of millions of dollars home in Delaware County or for other counties in Pennsylvania. I sued the opioid distributors, and Attorney General Shapiro was able to bring that case home to a settlement. And so people who are suffering from substance use disorder are getting help as we speak in Delaware County today because of that action taken by the Attorney General.
Now, beside the opioid settlement, what else has Attorney General accomplished for Pennsylvanians? Try to be as specific as possible.
Sure. Attorney General Shapiro and Attorney General Henry are working hand in glove with local DAs.
And it can predate them too, by the way.
Sure. So the Attorney General of Pennsylvania, again, gets to work with local prosecutors like myself on things like gun violence. I've worked in the city of Chester, which is an important area to me. It's the only city in Delaware County. It's the place where William Penn actually landed when he came to Pennsylvania. And it's the place my mother first called home when she came to this country as a 15-year-old Ukrainian refugee from a Nazi slave labor camp. With Josh's help, I've put in process a Chester Partnership for Safe Neighborhoods to make sure that the community and police are working together to reduce gun violence. Over the last 4 years, we've stopped the number of shootings are down by 72%. The number of gun homicides are down by 68%. That's the kind of work that the Attorney General of Pennsylvania has been trying to do in other localities all across Pennsylvania. And if I'm elected Attorney General, that's the exact work I want to do in every single county in Pennsylvania. Stop our young people from being killed by gunfire.
And how was that reduction of 72% in gun violence achieved?
By making sure that we work hand in glove with the community. We have a carrot and stick approach. It's called focused deterrence. It's a strategy based on about 25 years worth of evidence that shows if the community and police work together to interact with the 1% of people who commit 75 to 80% of the shootings, you can dramatically stop those shootings, to have those people either go on to a different life, and what we tell people is, we'll help you find a different life out of crime if you let us, but we're going to stop you if you make us, because you're not allowed to kill people with guns anymore. That has been dramatically successful because of the strong community support in the city of Chester, which is why we've had such great success with the reduction. And people now in the city of Chester who don't look like me are getting to live the American dream my family got to live when my mother arrived there in 1951. It's dramatically important to me.
And we'll talk some more about trying to reduce gun violence later on, but for now, let's try to focus on your current responsibilities. And I understand you're district attorney in Delaware County. So tell me about the basic duties there.
Sure. The district attorney is the elected chief law enforcement officer of their county. So very similar to the work the Attorney General does, I do it in Delaware County. So anybody who is charged with a state crime, for a violation of state law in Delaware County, state criminal law, my office investigates or works with the local police to do the investigation, and then we bring those cases to the court, and we represent the Commonwealth in those matters. We're a very busy office. We have about 5,000 to 7,000 cases every year. Delaware County is the 5th largest county in Pennsylvania. And so I'm very proud of the men and women I get to work with, both in my office and in the 44 different local police departments and agencies that we get to interact with every day to try to protect our citizens.
Now, you said you have thousands of cases a year, so try to focus for our viewers the kind of things you work on. Is there a certain pattern? Where do you spend most of your time?
Yeah, number one priority is always violent crime because that presents a danger not just to the one individual but to an entire community. And we've seen such an increase in gun violence crimes throughout the Commonwealth and throughout this country. And so the number one priority is always to make sure that we're trying to stop violent crime. We have a lot of thefts. So most people who end up in the state system for committing crimes, they've either committed a crime of violence or they've committed some kind of a theft. And theft is changing these days. A lot of it's now being done by computers. People don't have to go in and rob a bank anymore, but they can just knock over a mailbox, wash some checks, or send you an email to get you to send your personal information to them so they can just take everything out of your bank account without you even noticing.
And the law has to keep up with those advances in technology.
Not only the law, Larry, but also law enforcement. So we need detectives now who know how to get somebody's phone, how to download information from it. Forensics is one of the most important critical pieces now of law enforcement. It's really changed the way police officers have worked over the last 20 years. And as that technology continues to change, we have to adapt as well.
Now, I understand as district attorney, you've prosecuted construction companies for misclassifying employees. And just what do you mean by that?
Sure. So Pennsylvania has had a statute on the books for about 12 years now that makes it a crime to steal from workers by misclassifying them on the works in a construction industry. So if they're on a work site and you say that they're an independent contractor and not an employee, you don't have to pay unemployment comp, you don't have to pay some of the other benefits that are required, and that allows the employer, the contractor, to pay that employee less money than they should be making and have less coverage. They're stealing from the worker and from us as taxpayers.
This is being called wage theft.
It is absolute wage theft, and it is scandalous that nobody would do anything about it. When I got elected, Attorney General Josh Shapiro and I sat down within 90 days with labor leaders in the construction industry in Delaware County, and we said, we're going to put a stop to this. We've prosecuted 4 cases so far. People have actually gotten jail time. Contractors have gone to jail for stealing from the... We shouldn't even have to be having this conversation.
Well, how big a problem is this? I don't think I've even heard of wage theft until relatively recently.
It's a huge problem all across Pennsylvania, all across America. And tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of tax dollars are being deprived from the system to protect workers because of misclassification. As Attorney General, Josh Shapiro started a fair labor section within the office to help do this kind of work. As Attorney General, I plan to stand in his footsteps and to continue that work for working people all over Pennsylvania. My father got his start into the middle class, or was able to raise our family into the middle class because he got a union job as a SEPTA bus driver back home. So we have to protect working people. That's what the Attorney General's office has the power to do if you have the right person there who actually understands that the union way of life is the key to the American dream.
I want to talk about an interesting case you worked on that on the face of it, it looks like a small thing, but it could have big ramifications. It has to do with you're prosecuting a man who used a ballot with his dead mother's name on it to vote in election 2020. And give us the particulars.
Sure. So there's a group of election deniers in Delaware County who have been suggesting since 2020 that Joe Biden stole the national election right in Delaware County. They actually wrote a book, calling me out and slander, all this kind of stuff about me because I'm somehow part of that. What we did instead, what we actually did was investigate every single claim. The claims that they brought, baseless. But what we did find is one voter who was watching Fox News 24/7 in 2020 and hearing people like Donald Trump saying this election is going to be stolen. He got so distraught by that he registered his dead mother and then voted her. But because the system works, Larry, because that absentee ballot came in,
yes,
and the local election officials opened and said, wait a minute, We know people in this precinct. We know she's dead.
So that personal connection was important.
That's exactly right, which is why we can't drive people away from working as election workers with this baseless, stupid claims about stolen elections. Real fraud can be caught if we have good people working the polls who are actually local people who know the electorate.
So what then are the ramifications of this form of voter fraud? Like I said in the beginning, it seems like a small thing on the surface of it, but it seems like it has a reverberation that can go out far and wide.
It absolutely does, because it shows that there are still some holes in the process. I mean, the ability to register his dead mother was in part because of a failure of the computer system. Nothing more, nothing less than that. But once she was registered, the ability to try to vote her is where we caught her. So I think it both highlights the fact that no...
Caught him, rather.
I'm sorry, yes, caught him. You're right.
The mother's dead.
The mother's dead. But I think it highlights both the weakness of a system that requires human interaction, but at the same time, the strength of it because we did catch it. And I wanted to also make everybody aware of law enforcement. We don't have a fish to fry here. We're neutral. What we want to do is make sure every single election is fair and secure. And that's what I've done as district attorney. I'll continue that as attorney general.
Just what could you do specifically as Attorney General to preserve the integrity of elections? After all, that's the big thing here.
Absolutely right. So as Josh Shapiro did magnificently in 2020, every time allegations were made, cases were filed in court making baseless allegations of election fraud, he had to go into court with his staff, and they had to knock those down and got judges to decide no. All of those cases were thrown out of court because there was no evidence behind them. So the Attorney General, again, is the Commonwealth's chief civil officer. They have to go in and defend those cases before judges. So as Attorney General, you need to do that. But to do that, you really need the credibility that I've earned, I think, as a district attorney of Delaware County, to call balls and strikes based on the evidence and based on the facts. And if we do that, the majority of people are going to understand that there is no large-scale stealing of elections. It's nearly impossible to do that. There could be cases like the one we encountered in Delaware County, one-offs. But if they're going to get caught, we're going to convict them, and we're going to do what we need to do to hold those folks accountable.
Let's talk some more about your past experience. I'm going to ask you to jog your memory here because I'm going to ask you about your experience as Assistant U.S. Attorney. That goes back all the way to 2002. Tell me about that work.
Yeah, it was great. Working as a federal prosecutor was fantastic. I had started my legal career. I'm late to go to law school. I went to law school mid-career.
I noticed you graduated age 34.
Yeah, I didn't go to college till I was 29. I'm the first person in my family ever to go to college, and I sort of did it through independent study in mid-career. And then I decided, after earning a history degree, that I didn't want to be a history professor, although there's been moments when I've regretted that decision, and went on to law school. And in law school, the only course I found really interesting was criminal law, because it's about these issues of justice that mean so much to me and my family. So I started as an assistant district attorney in Delaware County, the office I now lead. And then I was promoted when my district attorney, Pat Meehan, became U.S. attorney. I came with him to start the gun violence program in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. Really enjoyed that work, and that's a lot of the knowledge I learned from that is what I'm applying right now as DA, particularly in the city of Chester. That strategy, focused deterrence, I learned about that as a federal prosecutor.
Now, all this legal experience we've been talking about, Jack, what's the main value of that going if you become Attorney General? Yeah,
you actually have to have a knowledge of the law and
Good
legal
start.
process. You're right. To be the chief law enforcement officer, you kind of got to know a little bit about the law. But it also, I think, gives you a grounding when you've had the experience I've had as a district attorney to understand how to put cases together, how to deal with people in law enforcement so you have the credibility to make tough decisions. As Ed Rendell told me when I started running for DA, when you're a district attorney or attorney general, you're really an umpire in many cases, and you're calling balls and strikes. And if you haven't built up the credibility that people believe you're doing it based on the evidence, that's when you're going to get into trouble. So what I've always tried to do is follow the evidence and the law and the facts, and that's to put me in good stead, both as district attorney and I hope as attorney general.
So let's hear some more, Jack, about your campaign, your platform, if you will, for attorney general. If you enter a room and there are 50 or 100 people waiting for you to make a speech, what do you want to get across to them?
Yeah, what I tell them is, look, I'm the best qualified Democrat both to serve as Attorney General, which I think is actually the most important thing, but also to win the general election, because I'm the only elected prosecutor running. I have a history of being elected to this office, not the AG, but to the same office, being a chief law enforcement officer. So the work I've done in Delaware County is the work I talk about to people, how I'm the only candidate running who's actually reformed a criminal justice system. We had the only privately run prison in Pennsylvania, our county jail, when I ran 4 years ago. I led the effort to deprivatize it, and I've reduced the prison population there by 40% by creating programs that keep low-level offenders out of our jails and get them the help they need to move on with their lives. I'm the only candidate who's actually stood up against the Dobbs decision, when it was before the U.S. Supreme Court. I've actually took legal action with Attorney General Shapiro and with District Attorney Larry Krasner. We filed a brief to oppose it, and when that decision came down anyway, taking away a woman's right, I took a public pledge never to prosecute a woman for violating her constitutional right to an abortion. And as you mentioned earlier, the work I've done on wage theft, the work I've done on gun violence, these are the things that I'm passionate about, and the work I've done as District Attorney will inform you of what you can find you're going to get from me when I'm your Attorney General.
Now, what else, Jack, do you care to explore as far as an agenda is concerned? As you said, we've talked about wage theft and gun violence. For example, how about consumer protection? Consumer
protection is vastly important work to me and also to the Attorney General. In Pennsylvania, the main statute we have to protect consumers is called the Consumer Protection Law, CPL. I've used it. Both the district attorney and the attorney general in Pennsylvania uniquely can use that law to sue people, corporations, or other people who are taking from consumers unfairly, fraudulently. I've used it in 2 instances. One, as I mentioned earlier, I sued the opioid distributors, the people who made a killing by putting opioids into our system and destroying so many lives and, frankly, killing people. That suit was successfully settled by the Attorney General of Pennsylvania, bringing tens of millions of dollars home to Delaware County. I'm also at the point right now of suing big chemical companies over the forever chemicals that are in our drinking water, our bodies, and in my particular case, in the firefighting foam our first responders have been using for decades. This is concentrated amounts of PFAS. So my first day as district attorney, I started the first environmental crimes unit in any DA's office in Pennsylvania, and I've put my folks to the task by suing big chemical companies to try to change bring more resources home to help people clean up the PFAS that are in all of our environment. And there's so much more I can do as Attorney General, both on consumer protection but also on environmental crime. That's what I'm passionate about and why I'm running for this office.
And I'm guessing those chemical companies, they're big, they have a lot of resources at their fingertips, don't they?
They do, and they've known for years that these chemicals were going to be everywhere and forever. And we are only now beginning to really understand the damage it can do to human beings. So this is going to be an issue that's going to continue to get played out over a course of years. But I was fortunate enough to take action early in the process that hopefully we're going to be there at the table when decisions are made about how we can bring more resources home to help people who are suffering from the PFAS.
Now let's go back to one of your priorities, which is reducing gun violence. And I understand you led a task force in Philadelphia, and you also accomplished goals in Chester City. So I'm wondering, especially for the benefit of our audience statewide, geographically, what was the difference between dealing with gun violence in Philadelphia versus Chester City?
Yeah, great question. So both of them are urban areas. The difference in Chester City is it's sort of a contained area. So in Philadelphia, we tried to do the same kind of program by police district. So I worked particularly in north central Philadelphia. In Chester, it's a city of 33,000 people. So it's about the size of a police district in the city of Philadelphia. But there's a larger holistic way that this program worked when I was a federal prosecutor that I would like to do as Attorney General. Every county and every community in Pennsylvania has a gun violence problem. It may not be people committing gun crimes on the streets, shootouts. What it generally is in many places is gun suicides. We're seeing vast numbers of people who are committing suicides, particularly in rural Pennsylvania, by use of firearms because of easy access to it and not enough safeguards. So what I would like to do is take a holistic approach, stop the yelling and screaming about legislation, but get law enforcement and the community together and say, in every county, let's address the issue. Let's address the actual issue as it exists in your community. If the problem is gun safety, let's get gun locks out there and let's start talking to people. And Larry, we also have to get them the mental health services that they need, which is too often lacking all across Pennsylvania.
Well, there's more emphasis on that in our state legislature as well, even recently.
There needs to be even more. I can tell you from veteran law enforcement people who've been in law enforcement a lot longer than me, that's the big change that they've seen over the last couple of decades. The number of calls we get and have to respond to that are really just mental health issues primarily, and people acting out because they're not getting the help they need. A lot of people...
And lots of officers may not know how to handle those complaints.
They're either not trained, and we're doing a much better job at training them, but we also need experts. So our Congresswoman, Mary Gay Scanlon, got us a federal grant, and we've embedded a team of people, specialists, mental health specialists with two of our largest police departments as an experiment to see if they are riding along in the cars, how we can change the outcomes in the community if we have mental health experts right there with our police officers when they respond to these calls. But the problem is such a nuanced problem, but we just need to do it community by community. And that's why I want to spend 4 years of my life as
Sounds like each one
General.
has its unique concerns that you want to address.
It absolutely does. And we tried to do that at the federal level when I was an assistant U.S. attorney. I know I can do it as your attorney general. All 67 counties, I want to partner with the local DAs, partner with the communities and say, let's figure out what your gun violence problem is. Let's find a way to solve it.
Now, I understand that you led an effort to connect offenders with job training. I'm guessing that applies to both the city of Chester and Philadelphia.
Absolutely. As I mentioned, what we're doing under this focused deterrent strategy is really both a stick and a carrot, right? So the carrot is, hey, what do you need to get out of a life of crime? And most people who are doing that, particularly as they're aging out, maybe they got shot once or twice, they kind of don't want to do it anymore, but they don't know a pathway out. So we've done things like we've paid for baby formula, we've paid for people to get commercial driver's license training. We want to give them a way out of that life, put down the guns, and stay out. And then they become community spokesmen in the community for the kind of work we're doing. But
are you aware of success stories to that effect? I'd like to hear one if you have one.
Actually, we actually bought a guy, got him into training to get a commercial driver's license.
Right.
Larry, he then got the commercial driver's license, found out he didn't really like driving the truck that much, but now he's opened a lawn care business and is doing great guns. And what we, of course, do is tell everybody in the neighborhood, and we have trusted messengers who we employ who go out in the community and they can say, look, see what he's doing? You can do the same. We're serious about this. We don't want to just lock you up. We're not just in that business. We know we're not going to wrest our way out of this problem. We need to change your behavior. And if you're honest about it and they can see examples of you doing that, then the trust begins to be built.
How much of the Attorney General's agenda is at that person's discretion?
A lot of it, to be honest with you. So, you know, a lot of the
Seems like all the candidates have their own pet areas to be involved in.
Correct. What you get to do as the elected official is set priorities for the office. So there's so much of the work that you have to do. I would say, you know, the majority of the work, the cases just come in and you have to handle them, you know, slip and falls on state property, that kind of stuff. But what you actually get to do is move resources into areas that you think are a priority. And that's what I want to do. That's what Attorney General Shapiro did in starting the Fair Labor section. That's what I'm going to do by bringing more resources to that work. And I'm absolutely committed to gun violence reduction all across Pennsylvania.
Now, you mentioned Governor Josh Shapiro again, and recently when he made his budget proposal, he mentioned his support for legalizing recreational marijuana, and I bet a person in your position has an opinion on that.
I certainly do. So one of the first things I did as district attorney was decriminalize the personal possession of marijuana in Delaware County. If you've got less than 30 grams, you're not getting arrested anymore. We can give you a citation if you're really being a nuisance and let you move on with your life. I've never smoked marijuana. It's not my thing, but I know people who've done and moved on in life and they've never become drug addicts. It is a dangerous drug, though, and we have to be serious about it. Smoking anything into your body is not a good, healthy thing, okay? But there are a scale of things that are worse than others. So doing hard drugs, doing fentanyl, right, is probably the top of it. Doing marijuana is down near the bottom. So I would be for recreational use, for legalizing it, but I would hope that the legislature will be thoughtful about it and put safeguards in there a lot of the marijuana that we're getting on the street has much higher THC levels than the marijuana you and I might have heard about when we were kids, because certainly you and I never did anything like that.
They say it's much more intense these days.
It's much more intense, and will create a black market then based upon how the state legalizes it. So all of these factors, how to keep it out of the hands of kids, if that's even possible. I have two 18-year-old children, and they tell me kids get gummies and all kinds of stuff all the time. So I think we need to be smart about it and hopefully thoughtful, and law enforcement needs to be at the table when this discussion happens.
So let's talk more about your campaign. In other words, are you getting out and meeting voters? Are you meeting other Democrats running for the same office? Have you had a candidate for him? Tell me about that interaction, if any.
Yeah, I mean, they're all good people, and we all kind of get along. It's one of the funny things that in a race like this, where you end up at these same events over and over again, and you kind of get to know each other.
Sure.
Some people I already knew, like Eugene D. Pasquale, who was our Auditor General.
Of course.
He and I are friends from long standing. But yeah, I'm getting around the state, which is fantastic.
What separates you from those other Democrats?
Honestly, my experience, and I don't think you can put enough on that. I think walking into a job where you're going to supervise 900 people, including people who do serious law enforcement work every day, I don't know how you can walk in without any prior experience, either practicing law, which one of my opponents has never really practiced law, and a couple of them, one of them is a former public defender who was on the other side. She's never not only prosecuted a case in her life, she's actually defended people who were the bad actors. So I don't think that prepares you for this job. And then there's a state rep, Jared Solomon, who's running, who's never been a prosecutor either. So I think, honestly, I'm running because I think I can actually do the work and do it effectively for the people of Pennsylvania starting on day one, which is why my candidacy has been embraced by organizations all across Pennsylvania. I'm the only candidate who's got significant endorsements from labor organizations that run the breadth of Pennsylvania. The entire Pennsylvania Building Trades Council has endorsed me. Both the Pittsburgh and Philadelphia Building Trades Councils have endorsed my candidacy. The Carpenters Union across Pennsylvania, Teamsters Joint Council 53, and now both Allegheny and Philadelphia County AFL-CIO labor unions not only have endorsed me, but are asking the state to endorse my candidacy as well, because of the work I've done protecting union workers, the union way of life, and workers generally in my work as DA and throughout my career.
Last question. Use the remaining time we have to just tell our viewers why to vote for you.
Because I want to serve you. I've spent my entire life in public service. Just a little bit more about me, if you don't mind, but my mother came to this country, as I mentioned, as a 15-year-old Ukrainian refugee from a Nazi slave labor camp. She got to live the American dream, starting in the city of Chester, for only a short period of time. She died in childbirth with me, so I never got to meet my mother. But she's been the inspiration for my entire life's work. I intend to hear her voice for the first time when I get to the next life. And I've made it my mission to be able to look her in the eye and tell her that I made my life count. And the way I determined to do that was through public service. So I feel good every single day I get up and able to make somebody else's life better. I've spent my life trying to make sure that people know that government can and should make a positive difference in the lives of the people it serves. I think I've done that as a deputy state treasurer, as a prosecutor, as district attorney, and I would hope to be able to do that for the next 4 years as your attorney general.
Jack Stollsteimer, Democrat running for PA Attorney General. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.